Hey everyone, Yasin here, and in this episode of Creating Kei, I thought I'd walk you through an episode of Creating Kei, in this case episode 2, and kind of dissect it and tell you about, how it was made and the thought process involved. What worked, what didn't work, what we would have done differently, and so on. So, to begin with, I think it's good to just show you the episode real quick. It's called Mub Explains How to Make a Blutburger. Mub is this guy. He's the chef, and he's like,
he talks like he uses very few words like this.
Step 1.
Make sure your blutworm's ready.
And he grabs a blutworm from this tray. Step 2.
Grab some blut from the grub.
The grub is the slang for the blutworm. Step 3.
Mix it up with stuff. Salt, eggs, crumbs, spices.
Step 4.
Toss it around. Make a ball.
Step 5.
Smush it. Don't over smush it. Keep it bun-sized. Use your tent, make a dent.
And a tent is short for tentacle and can be used to refer to any appendage. Step 6.
Heat that sucker up.
Step 7.
Don't flip until it comes off the grill nice and easy. Do not smush it with your spatula.
Step 8.
Put whatever smudge you want on it. Staff handles this, and I complain.
It's done. So, it's a very simple episode, and it was sort of an in-between where episode 1 is kind of following the action of Kei and introducing her. And it's more about, important stuff. Episode 3 is picking up with Arsha, who's Kei's aunt, and sort of explaining more stuff. And this episode was kind of weird for a lot of people because it kind of broke things. It was like episode 1 and then something completely different, and then episode 3. So that was intentional, but in hindsight, I think it was a mistake. And the thought process was that I wanted the story to be told in fragments, which then come together initially, and you get bits and pieces of things from very different points of view. So you're talking about Kei, and then you switch to talking about the chef, just explaining how a Blutburger is made, because Blut is important in the world, and you can kind of get a sense for, okay, there's more going on. But I wouldn't do it that way again. And the reason is because I didn't realize that I'm okay with those stories. I quite like stories that do that. But most people aren't okay with those stories. They want to focus on the character and really feel like at the end of every episode, it's leading into the next episode, at least in the beginning. And this desire for me to want to let's do this, and then completely different, and then bring it back, and then go here, and then, okay, now we go here, and it has a thread, but people won't see it until much later. I don't think that was a great idea. But as a standalone episode, it's okay as exposition. In normal episodes, and this is also something I didn't really do well, which is why we're working on a remake, is you should kind of introduce a character, have a desire, like something they want, then have an obstacle in the way or conflict, and then have some kind of resolution, and then sort of lead into the next episode. In this, it's more just it's just, here's how to make a Blutburger. There's no focus on some narrative or plot. And again, that was intentional, but again, it's not a common way of telling a story, and probably not a good way of telling a story. But how did we get to this point anyway? because I think maybe, I hope, there are still things that I can share which might be of use. So it starts with a script, and this is what the script is like. Mob explains how to make a Blutburger. So I break it down into the panel and the dialogue. So the visual things I put in blue. So in the first panel, a shot of picking up the blutworm from the barrel, and then make sure your blutworm's grunt ready. So this goes through a lot of changes. In the beginning, what I tend to do, I don't have it here, is but I'll just write whatever's in my head. So maybe something like Mubs explaining how to make a Blutburger. He goes through the process and does so in an entertaining fashion. And then maybe I'll put a note like, a lot of cool shots. Because I might be thinking about how I want this to be interesting, because the subject's not that interesting, right? I mean, it's just explaining how do you make a burger. What's so interesting about that? Well, the fact that it's not interesting for me is what helps it, because you get to focus on what's different, not what's the same. So we're used to burgers, and a lot of people know how to make a burger. It's not rocket science. But here you get to see that, okay, so the meat comes from a blutworm, and it's called Blut, and it's sort of poos it out, so that's disgusting and different, and it's pink, and okay, so that's a bit different. But then otherwise it's more, okay, so it's basically a burger, but this is one of the keys, that the meat comes from blutworms. How does it come? We don't know that yet. That hasn't been explained, but we know it comes from them. And then the other thing we're getting is Mub, the character. Because of the way he talks, what he says, what he doesn't say, it gives you an insight into his character. So the way he's like, mix it up with stuff, eggs, crumbs, salt, instead of like, mix it up with spices like eggs and crumbs or breadcrumbs, and like he's very
blah, blah, toss it around, make a ball.
And so that's the other thing. So we introduce Blut, that it's a thing, what it's used for, and Mub's character. And then on the side, yeah, okay, sure, how to make a burger. But that's it. So this is where it starts. And then I hand this off to Bob Meatbag, and also known as Zen Fuli. The credits here, you'll see. There's me, Zen Fuli, and Flavia. So then he does a pass on the layout. So this was his first thing, which is Mob explains how to make a Blutburger. Step 1, use a blutworm that's ready to be harvested. So the script probably got changed, but grab the blut, collect the blut from the blutworm, combine the blut with salt, spices, breadcrumbs, and an egg in a mixing bowl. And this is a shot that I liked. Kind of go down. Then you see, like, we're looking down now at it. Step 4, grab 5 to 6 ounces of meat and lightly toss from hand to hand, forming a ball. So you can see that this was a lot more dialogue heavy, and it wasn't really capturing his personality. So that changed. So, you got to think about how people talk about things. And I learned one of the most important things is to not just write, but read the thing in the person's voice as best as you can. Like, obviously, my voice is not that deep.
So it's very hard to do Mob's voice, for instance.
And if I'm doing Kei's voice, it's very hard to do Kei's voice too, because I just it's hard to occupy that. But even if it's a shitty accent or a bad version, kind of at least getting the pacing of the way the person talks can help a lot when you hear it out loud, because it's very different than if you're just writing it. We write differently than we speak.
With Arsha, I have much less problem, and I think Arsha's voice is a voice I can do, but Mob's voice is basically like Arsha's, but it's deeper.
I struggle with that. So anyway, yeah, so that was long-winded, but I like this shot, tossing it around. Pat into disc. The patty should be at least as wide as your bun and about 3/4 to 1 inch thick. Again, a lot more. Make a divot in the middle of the patty with your thumb so the burger maintains its shape when cooking. That turned into
use your tent, make a dent.
So, cook the meat on the griddle at medium to high heat. I thought this was a cool shot. Flip the burger when it releases from the griddle without sticking. Thought this was cool too. Cook about 5 minutes for each side. So you can really see how much Bob brings to the table with all these shots. And then I guess that's as far as it got. So now I'll show you what happens next, which is, so this was Bob's, and then this is my redraw thing. So a revision, I guess. And so I felt this composition was fine, but a little boring. Like, the layout of a webtoon is, well, it's like this. And so there's a lot of verticals, right? You're going woo, 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 woo. And these are kind of at diagonals as opposed to straights, because straights, you have it here at the top. You see here where it have this bar. That's a horizontal, and then this is a vertical. So if I do a straight horizontal or a straight vertical, the eye is seeing multiple horizontals and verticals, and it'll get bored. So if you want to entertain the eye, and I think that's something that's very important, entertaining the eye, you want to make sure that you're not just doing horizontals and verticals. So in this case, I thought, okay, let's break it up. Let's do some diagonals here. And rather than just being Mub explains, maybe Mub is written in like big, heavy text, because that's the kind of person Mub is. He misspelled burger here. How to make a burger. But anyway, and then explains is like, all right, maybe that's just like done artistically in some way and turned into this. But yeah, basically there. So, okay. And then I thought, how to make a Blutburger. I kind of wanted it to be more decorative as a font, more like a maybe an Art Deco type, which kind of is here, but I guess I italicized it. But I just wanted it to be more feminine to contrast with this heavy masculine. It's like, okay, and then we have like a more feminine thing. And then, so I thought this was good. So kept that. I felt the thumb and stuff maybe needed to be a bit different, but overall this is pretty much the same. For this one, I felt there's a lot of these purely horizontal lines, and I found that was very boring. So one of the things you may notice, and this was actually the first thing I did, is if you look at this, see how clean it is straight down the middle? There's no extra stuff. And here there's like this ugly line. What is that? What's going on? Well, that's actually what I started with, which is this flow line. And it was something that I haven't seen done necessarily, but I got the idea from figure drawing, because that's how I do my figures. I start with a line of action and a gesture, and then I build a figure on top of that. So I was thinking, okay, is there a way to replicate that? Is there a way in comics to make it so, why do you put a gesture in a figure? So you can feel the movement. So can I do that? So I started with this like S curve and just went down, 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 all the way. You can see it, this swooping thing. And then notice how like the text follows that line, like it sits on that line, and that creates this flow. Very cool. I think it's cool anyway. This like, so when you read this, you might not feel it because it's broken up, but as you go, your eyes kind of like goes here, following the text, and then it's coming this way, then it hits this, now it starts going this way, now it starts going this way, picks up here, goes down here, then we move to the left, then we swish to the right again, we go around, now we're dropping, go straight down, straight, straight, straight through here. Now we're picking up this from the yellow here, we're picking up on the curve again, come around here, go this way. Now we hit the ball, and then the diagonal pushes us down to smush it, get here, and then don't over smush it, keep it bun-sized. Now we're going this way again, and then we come down. And then here, there wasn't enough space. I actually would have done this differently with the things, but there's the smoke, and the smoke leads to this area, which then pushes us this way to the right, pick up on step 7, come down again. Here's the burger, we'll pick up on that, go down through this. Okay, now we go this way, don't over smush it, then back this way. You can see the smoke in the background, the steam is kind of following that, carries on this way. This one, I had it a bit more spread out, but basically you go down, 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 follow the steam again, and then it's done. So that's what I call my flow, and working on the flow. So we implemented that. You go down, get here. So I wanted this to be much more vertical, because I was thinking this is very horizontal. So when you get here, what happens? Well, your eye's kind of going off the page. It's not something you want. You want the eye to go down the page, not off. So the way I thought of it is that you would have the text to kind of pause the eye as you read the text, but then you keep going down on a flow. And a lot of people have commented that it flows really well, and this is why. So if you want to copy this, feel free to copy the idea of flow, but I will tell you, there is a downside to flow. And I'll talk about that a bit later. But okay, so you come down, and then I thought it might be nice to have him actually catching the blute. It's a bit disgusting, but it's more of a sense of, okay, he's a hands-on type of guy. He's not particularly concerned about hygiene, and that gives you a little bit of that insight into his character. This one I kept exactly the same because I thought it was great. And then we move on. So this one, again, very horizontal. I thought the shot was cool, but I thought, if you make it more diagonal here, that's a lot more dynamic, especially as you're reading down. It creates more interest. So just changing the panels, breaking it up a bit more. But otherwise, as I said, I think Bob did a great job. And then smush it, that stayed the same. And then for these, he has them kind of spread very evenly, and like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I didn't really like that. I thought that was a boring shot, so I put in some perspective and tried to make it more cool, like, and then he's squishing the, like, instead of make a divot in this says to make a divot, and it shows like the divot, but it's not showing the action, whereas this is sort of more interesting because we've got to cut like one panel and then another panel, and it's showing the thumb pushing into that. And then here there's steam coming off, but I thought that steam could actually be a compositional element, and I didn't mind this shot, but I just thought this one worked better, where we're kind of from the opposite side. You get the steam coming, and then this was great, so I kept that. And then I put in a little insert because I felt like looking at this, okay, we've got a hand here, but then it's just really like burger, 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 burger. So by including him again, it brings it back to the character, that it's about a character. It's not just about the burger. And then we follow this theme again. And then, yeah, here I had the burger a bit more expanded. And then, and it's done. And there's the logo. So that's a process of the layout. Then I give that back to Bob, and then he does some cleans for the background, and I do the character. So and then I do the inking and I do the coloring. So here's what each individual panel looks like. This area all around is all transparent, so it's just transparent PNGs, and just work on each element. We do these 1600 pixels wide, and then we shrink them to 800 pixels. So it's made at twice the size, or twice the resolution of the final image. And we found that works pretty well. And yeah, so you can see like there's no backgrounds, just the objects. And then we go ahead and put in the backgrounds after. So that's it. And we also have the dialogue. So the dialogue is like this. We make it in Clip Studio Paint. And I think for this one we were using a font called Wild and Crazy, but we've switched to a font called Jack Armstrong BB. And it's pretty good. And so, yeah, we get these. When you see like extra space here, it's because this is coming from the side, so this part's actually cut. And that makes it so we can kind of drag it back and forth to find the right placement. And Flavia does this part. So if you're wondering, you know, what part does Flavia play in this, she does editing with me, and also creating these dialogue things. Then we put it all together. So we end up with a big file, and this is actually one of the shortest episodes. Most of the files are humongous, and it's this very long strip. And so we've got the scrolling, and everything's in its own little area. So like panel 1, you've got mob, you've got the title, and you've got this. I felt like originally it was this blue. I thought maybe this would be a bit nicer and push it into the background a bit. But yeah, so you've got that. So those are the components of, and then the dialogue is all on its own, in its own group. So I mentioned there were downsides to working with a flow, and there are two major downsides. So the first is actually, I guess it's pretty obvious, but when you work on this flow, it's very good for webtoon. It's very good for webcomics in general, reading on a phone, reading on an iPad or something like that. It's very, very nice. It flows really well. But it's terrible if you want to make a traditional comic book. So if you want to take your work and put it in, like print it, sell it at conventions, or have it just as a traditional format, this is really, really difficult, almost impossible to make it work, because it's just not going to look good. So many decisions are built for webtoon. And what we thought is, well, you know, we're making webcomics. This is probably going to be how comics are ingested more and more in the future. So maybe that's a trade-off to have, where we can focus on, no, it's good for web and only web, but that's fine. But I would say over time my thought on that changed a bit, because I did start to feel like, yeah, it's a shame I can't hold this in my hand and just flip through it. That would be a nice feeling. So that's the first major issue. The second major issue is that you end up with ginormous files like this. And everything, because it's all built on that initial flow, that initial S curve, there's very little room for modification. So if you work in a traditional way, what you have is like a page with panels. And what people tend to do with web comics is they will they'll have a page like so, and they have their panels. Maybe one's like that, maybe one's like that, and then maybe one like that. Okay. And then when they want to turn it into a webcomic, they'll take these elements, these panels, and they'll just rearrange them. So maybe this panel goes into a panel more like this, and then maybe this one is more here, and then this one maybe is like that. So we kind of created that vertical flow. See, you've got that S going on, but it's a lot more, it's not as elegant as the one here where it's actually built off an S. But the advantage is with these, let's say I felt, you know what, we need an extra panel here. It's really no problem to just, add, break things up. Maybe that needs to be more like that. It's much easier to move the components because they are independent of each other largely. I mean, in some cases they're not, but like if you had a sequential panel where you have three that need to go together, maybe it's someone's eye, and first the eye's looking this way, then the eye's looking this way, then the eye's looking that way, and these are sort of connected. I mean, you could do one there and one there, so you still can move them around, but it's different when you've got it all built from scratch. There's really no room for changing things, altering things, adding panels, subtracting panels. It's doable, but it's much harder. So for those two reasons, we felt like the flow is probably just not worth it. It's a lot of effort for not much reward. I mean, that's not true, because there's a lot of I love the flow personally. I think it's really good, but it's very hard. It's very hard to make it into a traditional thing, and it takes a lot longer. And you end up with these, as I said, these huge, super long things, because everything is connected to everything else, and you can only see how it looks when it's in context. And we're using these huge gradients that kind of blend naturally from one into the next. You can see here, like, if you just look at the background, we go from this blue to this sort of orangey pink, white, gray, purple, yellow, and then continue the yellow going into white, gray, blue, red. So the blue is kind of there so that when it leads to the red, feels hot. And then we move to more of a purple, white, blue, and the blue here is to make the yellows pop, so that the bun, the cheese, and then the burger as well, but mostly the yellow parts all pop off. And then we get to a sunsetty purple, and then a yellow with it's done, and then move to a white. So those long gradients, if you think about it, they kind of have to be done on one big thing. And so, again, it makes it that much harder, because you end up with file sizes that are super big. And in the last couple of episodes, episode 15 and 16, we actually had to shrink the images quite a bit and lower the resolution quite a lot just to fit the images because it was so big as a file size. Whereas if you have things on a white background, for instance, you cut those file sizes way down. So it is something that, I like it. It definitely has its perks. If you want to do it, this is how. You start with a big swooping line, and then you do your compositions and try and make everything fit. And it helps to actually do it without it first. So you get your ideas down and then put it in and try and bring things and adjust things to that. But it's not something I think we'll use going forward. And that may disappoint people, and I'm slightly disappointed myself as well, but it's got its trade-offs. And then what we do after we've got that big long file is we put it in this program called Croppy. And what that does is it just cuts things up. It's actually an online app. This is if you just search for Croppy and then webcomic or even just Croppy, you'll find it. And you just choose your file, put it in, and then it cuts it up automatically into sizes that are suitable for webcomics. So that's really good. And that's it. So that's a process of creating one of these. Again, there were issues with it, things we would do differently. Certainly, if I was to do it again, I would make sure I am going to do it again, but I'm not redoing the episodes I've already done. What we're doing is, initially I wasn't even going to start the way I did. What happened is I had sort of a plan in mind for a first episode leading into a second episode, third episode. And it was a lot more like a dramatic thing. And I started to second guess myself and think maybe, this is a big world. There's a lot of concepts that are flying by really quickly. Maybe we need to take some time. Maybe we need to, spend some time with the crew when things are sort of more calm, more okay, instead of like drama and action and oh crap, everything's happening. And for that reason, we slowed everything down. We got the first 16 episodes out, and then it would be really the 17th episode was going to be more like how episode 1 was supposed to be. And the previous 16 episodes were just sort of like a intro to the world of Space Waitress Kei. But the thing is, 16 episodes are a lot of episodes for people to get into. And if you're not hooking them really quick, this is something I learned, is really the culture is to, people have short attention spans. You got to hook them. You got to bring them in quick. You got to explain the character. Who's the character? What's their desire? What's their motive? Move. So in the remake, what we're going to be doing is focusing a lot more on kind of the initial episode 1, and we're going to really work hard on it. And we've been doing that, and I think it was good to do the first ones, because what happened is we learned a bunch of stuff. Like, we tried this flow thing, and then we thought it was really cool, and we really liked it, and people liked it. Then we saw, as the episodes got longer and longer, how this was really hard to keep doing, because there was, as you increase your length, you start to find problems. You see panels that's like, well, this doesn't really look good. It is, or dialogue that's like, this sounded good, but in context it doesn't look good at all. And then you've got to adapt. So when we do the redo, we will be starting earlier, but also we started working a lot more on fleshing things out. And there's this big issue with how much quality do you seek? How much is it where you're just constantly working and working, but you're not moving? Like you're just developing the world, but you're not making the story. You're not actually putting episodes out. And how much should you be putting episodes out, even though the world isn't fully fleshed out? Well, that's a difficult balance. And at first, we thought, you know what? I've made a couple comics for jobs, but nothing for myself, and no web comic. And so I didn't think I could do it, to be completely honest. When I was, I guess in grade 6, 7, I would make little comics, and I never finished like a full 22-page book, but I would take like a sheet of paper, make a grid, and then make these like comedy, cartoony things, kind of more like newspaper comics. And I made a bunch of those, but I never made like a complete beginning to end superhero type comic. And I always felt like, well, I don't know that I'm the type of person who can finish things. So I needed to prove to myself that I was that type of person, that I could do something as well, that I'm not just it sounds kind of bad to say, but I'm not a loser. And what this taught me, this experience, is that okay, I can do stuff, but I guess the thing I'm the most sad about is when I talk about making a comic after, or people might say, you know, oh, it's just your first comic, your next one will be better, and you'll be dealing with different things. And I didn't really want to deal with different things. I wanted to keep working on Space Waitress Kei. I like the characters, I like the world. So then it was like, well, should I be giving this up just for what? Because I did a bad job on the first try. And it's not like it's a terrible job, but it's not great. So I got this boost when I made it that, okay, I can do something, I can finish something, I can put it out there. It might not be perfect. And I also got the lessons, that there's so many lessons that you only learn when you do a thing. Like croppy, how to crop your images, making images a certain width. What's the downside? Using the flow. I wouldn't have got any of that if I hadn't made it, if I just sat and focused on world building. But after making 16 episodes, it was really like we've learned so many lessons. And I also read a book on storytelling and how stories kind of should be told to capture an audience and stuff. And it was like, okay, we could do this better. So I think there was all right, but how much do we work on the world? And the more we fleshed out the world, the more problems we found, but we're also making a better product. And it's my belief that things are usually done too quickly nowadays. There's too much of a rush to get things out there, and they're not ready. There's just not enough time or effort or thought put in. So much of, like, if you want to tell a good story, so much of that has to do with life experience as well. You know, living a life where you actually have stories to tell. And so because I want to do something good or something great, I don't want to just do something meh. And people have said, you know, it's better than a lot of webtoons out there. It's like, yeah, but that's not really, like, I just want it to be a very strong thing on its own, something that I can really be proud of. So that's kind of what I'm thinking when I'm working on these. And yeah, I mean, sorry for talking so much. I just wanted to give you a behind the scenes look into how things are made, and you know, hopefully this answered some things. I feel kind of bad because I wish I could be like, oh, I did it, here's the best comic ever, and here's how to make it, here's how to do it. Instead, I'm giving you more of a, this is okay, and we kind of screwed up in a bunch of ways, and here's what we learned, which I don't know if that's, you know, something that people would be interested in. But honestly, I really hope this helped, and thanks for watching.